This is the video. I want you all to like that Grubby Talks channel. And maybe if the video is good, give it a thumbs up. Very, very curious because I have no idea where this video is going and what he will be talking about. And maybe my list of meta-defining stuff is differing from his. And then we might do a tier list. Let's see.
Yo guys, what's up? This is a video where I'm going to be talking about the top 5 moments in my mind where a player showed creative prowess at using a new strategy or displaying something new and very refreshing in Warcraft 3 and in the tournament history of the meta of Warcraft 3 in the last 20 years. Now, what is creativity? Originally, I was going to do a video on what creativity is, but I'm not sure I'm really qualified to exactly explain the definition of creativity. I thought a lot about it, but I did come up with this. Coming up just with something new is novelty, but coming up with something new and useful to fulfill a purpose, that's real creativity, especially if that creation is successfully repeatable. So for these moments, I looked at times where a player would devise a new strategy or a new playstyle that would inspire many players afterwards, and it would reshape the way that the game was seen by players and viewers and fans around the world.
I like that.
Anyone can come up with something new, but it doesn't mean it's good. You could be creative by thinking, what if I just go mass acolytes? And I only make acolytes. And then I build 5 necropolis in the middle of the map. It's very novel. But I'm not sure you would really call it creative because it's just not very good, is it? It's not.
It's also just one unit. It's just one button. It's not very creative to put one unit together with more of the same, right? I agree.
Going to win you any games. So somehow real creativity in Warcraft 3 and in games is when you can find that special little something that reshapes how you and others may see the game. And you manage to apply it successfully in a competitive level against players which are your peers, your competitive equals. While it's historically always been hard to know whether a strategy is truly creditable to the person that first made it famous on the big stage, I would argue that just having the good idea isn't good enough. For creativity to be proven and truly shine, it has to be executed at that level. That does mean that sometimes some of these ideas may have been someone else's, but the person that showed it on the big stage will end up taking all the credit. And I'm sure that's probably true for many of the inventions in the past as well, that have been credited to another person, but then there's footnotes in our history that says, hey, actually it wasn't, this person that
For example, Moon is being credited for mass talents, but it was Magic Yang. Grubby is being credited for Farseer Headhunters when it was, I think, Kiwikaki.
Invented relativity. It was that guy. I've made a top 5 list of paradigm shifting ideas where creatively new strategies redefined Warcraft 3 and how people view the game henceforth. The first one is going to be...
Oh, wait! Shit! Before we watch this, I initially thought this would be like creep pulling would be involved. Ancient of War creeping, or if it's more about a strategy, like putting a certain collection of units together at a certain time. I'm very curious. So the first one was definitely not on my list. On my list, definitely Ted Fiends, Mass Talons, Sky's Tower pushes, probably Happy's Ghoul pushes, to be honest. And then Farseer Headhunters would be spoken out of the hip, but I'm very curious to see what Grubby has to say.
Defined Warcraft 3 and how people view the game henceforth. The first one is going to be Zacard's D&D if not urgent. Do not disturb if not urgent. Let's go a little bit back in time. Back in 2004, I and my teammates from Four Kings, we went to South Korea and we lived in Incheon, which is a city next to Seoul, for 3 months. We were there to compete in 3 televised leagues, and it was, for most of us, not for me, it was my second, for most of us it was our first time in South Korea. So we're there in South Korea, we're there to compete in TV leagues, and Zacard came over to our internet cafe. He is a Korean orc player. And he set up a practice session for myself and Moon. I was one of the most famous Western players. Moon was one of the most famous and accomplished South Korean players. And Moon trashed me 7-0. Zacard would then go on to sit at my PC and play against Moon, and he would win 3 or 4 out of the 7 games. This left a big impression on me, but an even bigger impression when 2 weeks later we left South Korea. Everyone flew to San Francisco to the World Cyber Games 2004, where, as luck
Guess who won that?
would have it, I would end up facing short round Chinese-American player in the semifinals, and I would end up winning and going to the finals. And I avoided meeting either Zacard or Moon in the semis as they faced each other. Zacard would end up winning 2-1 against Moon in those semifinals in a series that left a lasting impression on me and many others. The way that Zacard handled Moon was incredible. Back then, Night Elf players would often go for a Tavern Hero or 2 Tavern Heroes to create a lot of temporary summons, usually a Beastmaster and a Firelord, or the Firelord into the Beastmaster. Sometimes it
That was when Incinerate didn't cost mana. Freaking sick.
was a Demon Hunter and a Beastmaster, but overall it was a lot of heroes that offered a lot of momentum with their summons early on. Then they would make an army, well, we used to call it Army of BS, Huntresses, Archers, Talons and Dryads. Just this mixture of tier 2 army that was pretty high on the DPS, exacerbated its damage with the Fairy Fire upgrade. And the Dryads would offer lockdown, some slow, some abolish, some dispel, a bit of extra damage as well. And then with all the summons, there were too many things to dispel. Back then, Orc would play Farseer and Tauren Chieftain with Grunts and Shamans, and Zacard played along those lines as well. So his unit choice wasn't creative. But what was very creative and what netted him the win was as follows. Moon would attack during a somewhat standard attack timing. He would attack Zacard's base and he would show up with this massive army, and that's when...
Can I just say how well edited this is and how awesome it is to have this content in Warcraft? This already. I don't even have to watch this further. This is thumbs up, easy.
You town portal. Someone says knock knock, you say who's there. The Orc will town portal and he will probably lose. Elf, and especially Moon, was so powerful against Orc. Elf was winning more games against Orc than Orc was winning against Night Elf. Someone attacks your base and threatens your only base,
shadows.
your only economy, you have to go and defend. But Zacard said, what if I just don't? What if I just don't? And he just stayed on the map. So Moon starts attacking his barracks, he starts attacking his altar. And Zacard is like, only disturb me if it's urgent. This doesn't look urgent to me. So the barracks was dying and the altar was dying, and then Moon starts to chip away on some burrows.
This was, of course, back when fortified defenses were on tier 3, so no chance really to hold.
And he's killing the shop, maybe some peons are dying, right? And Zacard is like, I don't see how this is a problem. So what is he actually doing? He keeps making units and rallies them to the back of his own base, trying not to have them die. He kept creeping fast with his Farseer TC, his Grunts and Shamans. He would take a camp, that's when he gets attacked, he finishes it, then moves to the next. And if he was feeling really cheeky, he would go to a third creep camp. Those creep camps gave him bonus gold, they gave him bonus experience points, which gave him bonus hero levels, which gave him bonus skill points in powerful spells such as Shockwave and Chain Lightning. Maybe he'll sell one or two of the items he finds, buys 1 or 2 heal scrolls, then he town portals. His base is in shambles, but he town portals in with unusually strong heroes because he had a revelation where he decided, if I delay my time to go back, I can get a little bit of extra power, and that's going to end up helping me. And it did. He ended up winning the series 2-1, and he would advance to the World Cyber Games 2004 finals in a shock upset over Moon, as most people picked Moon for the victory in that tournament. Very, very cool.
Damn. Cool. Didn't have that on my mind at all. So it's good to see historical context here. And I think that's something to learn, especially, and I kind of realize this now, in Warcraft 3, it is such a unique game because of the town portals. And you can react to an attack at any moment, really, right? So building that confidence in the strength of your base, because the win condition is losing all buildings and Orc burrows against a lot of piercing damage and magic damage. When that was TFT, right? Yeah, it was. takes a long time. That is damn cool. That is damn cool. And that is a process that an RTS has to go through. Like, what's important? This was at very, very early on, and many people are like struggling with this to this day. Like, is it important to defend my expo now, or can I just sack it? That's like the brainchild of a Zacard innovation, right?
Cool. The second most creative moment from the memory of competitive history in Warcraft 3 would be the creation of the dreaded Mass Druid of the Talon strategy.
Love it.
You see?
Shout out to give credit to Magic Yang. Shout out to many people don't do this. Magic Yang came up with it. Moon refined it and popularized it. Shout out for historical accuracy.
This all started with a Chinese player called Magic Yang. Magic Yang was a Chinese Night Elf player that developed a new strategy of mass Druids of the Talon somewhere in early 2005. He would end up using that strategy against several Orcish opponents in a tournament in the Far East, somewhere in China. And I thought, maybe it's a meme strategy, I don't know why they're losing to it. Later that year, in 2005, the same orc player, Zacard, Huang Taimin, real name. I can say Huang Taimin because we're tight like that. I can use his real name. You can know him as Zacard. Anyway, he came from South Korea and he went to Germany to compete in the ESL Pro Series, aka EPS. And the EPS had a first place prize of something like $9,000. And, you know, South Korean gamers in RTS are renowned and feared by RTS players around the world. There's a lot of respect for South Korean gamers in Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2, and especially in StarCraft 1. So I maybe expected he would do quite well in the EPS. He ended up having some troubles to adjust, and he would not actually end up taking top billing, but...
he also went back to Korea in the middle of the season and then had to play on European ping from Korea with our early 2000 internet connection, so you had to play at like 400 ms or something. Yeah, bit of a disappointment after all, but seeing a Korean moving to Germany, that was mind-blowing.
Zacard was a legendary player that a lot of people looked at. He had invented the Mass Wyvern strategy against Night Elf and against human. He was very good against human in particular, often winning against any non-Korean human players, and all Korean human players as well. But the story, that what it's about here is he brought tidings from the East. All right. So I ended up meeting him at one of the German tournaments that I went to, and he came to me and he said, "Grubby, there's a new strategy in China and in South Korea, and it is so impossible to beat. It's a Night Elf strategy. After I'm here in Germany, I'm gonna fly back to Korea, and I need your help. We need to do some brainstorming, you know." From orc to orc, man to man. And he explained what it was. And he said, they go mass Druids of the Talon, and they go this hero and this hero and this hero, right? And it is, and I heard about it. I was like, mass talents? How is that supposed to work? I said, just go demolishers.
This is so unreal at the, like, from today's perspective, right? Because we're so privileged right now that we have Twitch, that we have Flow TV, that we can download every single ladder game. So if you see, hey, there's a new strategy, you download the rep, you see what it's about, you see what the strength is, and like with the help of a Discord, you can figure it out, right? Back then, even getting replays from Korea or China, especially China, was impossible if you didn't have any connections or were just super lucky. So if you just hear about a strategy and you don't even see how it works, it's so hard to envision mass talents to work even.
They have unarmored. Just make demolishers and blow them up, right? He's like, no, it doesn't work because XYZ and summons and this and that. I'm like, okay, mass raiders then. Obviously, you can just do mass raiders. He's like, yeah, but the cyclone and then they go the keeper and the entangle. And I'm like, I feel like he's so unconfident about the build that he has already defeated himself. So at this point, it's a mindset issue. I've already come up with a bunch of things, a bunch of strategies that will defeat this mass talent domination strategy.
This was also like from now you say, oh, just go walkers and dispel, or just go any kind of dispel. Back then, walkers didn't have resistance skin like the mountain giants have. So they were just spiraling up in the air just like any other unit. They were just disabled just like any other unit. So you couldn't dispel. They were all up in the air.
But he's just not able to hear it. And so I was like, just do this, just do that. He didn't believe in any of it. He said he already tried it, etc., and so on. And so I thought, I don't know, his mindset seems to be not so great. You know, in World Cyber Games 2004, which I ended up winning, I won against Short Round in the semifinals. Back then, it was still Druid, Huntress, Archer, Talon. And so after I somewhat didn't believe that it's really a problematic strategy, that year in 2005, a couple of months later after my conversation with Zacard, about 3-4 months later, I lost the Short Round in World Cyber Games 2005 in the semifinals again, 1-2 against Master Druids of the Talon.
Boop, boop, boop. That's what you get for not respecting your opponent. I think also little inaccuracy here from a tournament perspective. I don't think it was the semifinal because Short Round was never in a final, right? Oh, was he? Did he make it silver? WCG 2005. Was he really silver? Oh, he was! Okay, sorry, I take everything back. Sorry, Grubby. Sorry, how could I even dare? How could I even dare to question your knowledge? Yeah, the greatest American success ever on an international stage. Sorry, apologies.
And everything I just tried to do wasn't good enough, which is pretty frustrating, but it's not like I could have seen it coming or anything like that. So anyways, that strategy would end up dominating the meta for the next 10 years.
Yep.
It was the #1 strategy for the next 10 years.
Yep.
So apparently when Zacard said it's pretty good, he wasn't wrong. So I'm telling you here the history of the strat. Magic Yan came up with it. And as everybody knows, the ancient meta lore of Warcraft 3, Spirit Moon is the one that perfected it. And it's his iteration that has endured the next 17 years and is still being played today.
I don't know how it is for you, but whenever I hear Spirit Moon, my nostalgia kicks in big time. Like, he was this phenom on forums that if you got a replay of Spirit Moon, who didn't play too many clan wars, just one-on-one tournaments and televised tournaments in Korea, because you couldn't watch televised tournaments from Korea, right? It was impossible with the internet. You were reliant on replays. You couldn't download a 500 MB video file, speaking of, or even upload. There was no connect. There was no Google Translate for the Korean scene. This all didn't exist. So seeing something, just something of Spirit Moon, who went like 2.5 years of an undefeated streak on Korean television, it was just, oh my god, I found a treasure.
Sometimes on maps where it's suitable. Demon first, Beastmaster second, Tinker third. The Tinker third was not part of the original strategy. I think when I saw Magic Young doing it, was like with Keeper of the Grove or anything like that.
Yeah.
That was #2. Let's move on to the third top creative moment. Originally, China was a sleeping dragon.
So what finally beat that though? I think it took I think the first one to beat it was probably Grubby with a lot of base lane, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong here, but the first to like win straight up fights versus Talons could have been Lin with exceptional radar micro. But that was many, 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 many years later. But hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I remember it. Like straight up fights against mass Talons took literally 10 years to figure out.
When it came to both StarCraft 1 and Warcraft 3. It's not that China in general wasn't interested. They love strategy, tactical games like StarCraft and Warcraft 3 there. But because of the, let's say, the wealth revolution in China was happening shortly after that and wasn't happening as fast, it was more uncommon to have personal computers at home. The segregation of the internet management style in China has meant that it has sometimes been harder. It has been harder for Chinese people to connect with Western games, as I'm sure you probably are familiar with. And so for the first year or two, maybe 3 years even, China was not a big player in Warcraft 3, at least insofar as the Western audience and players were aware of.
I know what's coming.
But somewhere late 2004, early 2005.
You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. The legend.
New player had burst onto the scene. His name? Sky, Li Xiaofeng. And Sky revolutionized the way that human was seen forevermore after in multiple ways. There's actually too many ways to mention, but I'm going to highlight 2 strategies that Sky invented and how he showed the potential for human in a way that hadn't really been seen a lot before. The first and most known one is the Sky Tower Rush. During a time of 2002 to 2004, human was generally seen as the macro race. Macro standing for macro management, which also stands for economic management and grand tapestry, big picture focused play, where you try to spread yourself across many different bases, get a lot of money, play some big game hunters style, and you pretty much try to ignore little inconveniences while beating the enemy with money. With the money bag over the head. Sky saw things very differently. He utilized a very aggressive human style where he would have a very minimalistic approach to creeping, starting with an Archmage, going for the smallest camp on the map without militia.
That's crazy, by the way. This would never happen. Actually, it kind of did happen. But it would be so hard to make this happen in nowadays Warcraft, because everything is just such an echo chamber and a lot of people are just following the top players' leads. Even like the tier 2 player, oftentimes, 99% of the case, follow the top player's lead and try to emulate them instead of sidestepping with strategies. This guy, freaking Sky, saw the identity of a race and have it turn a 180. And I think the next time this happened was probably like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when undeads really started to expand and not go for the timing pushes anymore. That's the only time I can think of where such a radical shift has happened. Because it was always timing push, timing push, timing push, timing push. Especially with human, right? With Pit Lord or whatever. If you don't break this expansion, you're done. And that was also supported with patches, of course. But Sky wasn't.
Most people were militia creeping. He would save money on extra farms, extra peasants, extra footies. He would fast tech really quickly. 2 farms, arcane tower, or even 2 farms, a lumber mill, and a guard tower back then. Arcane tower was a little undervalued back in that time. And he would fast tech. He would apply a lot of pressure. He never made a goal of getting Archmage level 3. Everybody else was hunting Archmage level 3 in order to get those juicy level 2 water elementals.
That's disgusting.
He had a different view. He's a very talented and smart player and very hardworking. So he had done a lot of testing. And he saw something that other people did not see.
No, Hot Lips, right?
So he used level 1 Archmages to harass Orc players, to harass Night Elf players, instead of going for level 2 or 3 or 4. He used level 2 Archmage to harass early, without any intention to creep beyond that. And then, the moment he gets to tier 2, second hero from the tavern, against Night Elf it would be Naga Sea Witch, and against human it would be Beastmaster. Immediately rush again with that hero as fast as possible, while double power building Arcane Sanctums back at home. Even before the first unit was out, he would call militia, pull them to the Orcish or the Night Elf base, and start putting down towers. The defender would try to take down the towers and be embroiled in an early defense, during which time Sky would have many summoned units like Quillbeast and Water Elementals. Those would be extra bonus units to bridge the gap for his casters to start arriving. The defender would then have a choice. Do I take down the Footies, the Archmage or Beast? Do I take down the Quillbeast or the Water Elementals, or the tower, the Scout Tower and the Arcane Tower that are building? while making a choice between all of those, new threats would start arriving, namely sorceresses and priests, and they would then slow the defenders' units, who would then have trouble re-engaging and disengaging. Slowly, the defenses would start getting worn down, and Sky would end up winning many of those games. Sky would end up defeating me in World Cyber Games 2006, maybe 2007 as well, if I remember correctly, with such strategies as the Sky Tower Rush, and he would end up using that for a long time to come. And everybody copied him. Everybody copied him. Archmage.
It was so toxic! Oh my god, this is why every time there's a buff to towers, this is the reason. Every time we see like a PTR and there's just the danger of towers being buffed in some sort of way, we advocate against it because we've been through 7 years of tower pushes and it's so toxic. No, it's not good. Not good at all. So Sky is the reason why we go for these warnings. And man, what a fantastic explanation by Grubby.
Beastmaster Tower Rush. And it was such a hard time to play against Human because of the way that he contributed to the thought school for Human. The second strategy he developed was mounting first against Orc during a time where Farseer was the meta rather than Blade initially. But he endured with the strategy when Orcs started switching to Blade in order to try and deal with it. To escape with Windwalk from Stormbolt surrounds, he would go Mountain King first, fast expand, and he would make a bunch of towers. You know, nothing unusual, 4 to 6 per base. Straight to tier 3, Paladin second, and then Blacksmith, couple of armor upgrades for Griffins, and then Moss Griffins. And then try to rush it.
Dude, Chinese humans, right? Undoubtedly the greatest humans to ever play this game. Plus a couple of outsiders, of course. Such a toxic playstyle. Oh my god. Like, think of Sky with these tower pushes. Think of Infi with 240 towers. Think of Fortitude with the tanks, right? It's also rather unfun. Like, that was their big strength. TH is an outlier, of course. TH was built differently than all the others. But Sky, Infi, 40, they just erase fun from the game.
An overwhelm. He was able to find a weakness in the timing for Orc's standard responses. The Stormbolt threatened people away from his expansion attempt so that the hero would be afraid. He would get that money advantage. He would then throw armies of footies and mercenaries at the Orcish tier 2 counter expansion attempt, not even caring if he loses a hero, a TP, 2 mercs and 6 footies, which seems incredibly inefficient. He'll kill almost nothing, but he'll cancel that base. And then, even though the Orc is getting high-level hero, high-level Farseer, high-level TC, or high-level Blade and Shadow, eventually 4 Griffins come out, 6. If he found a window, he would fly to your main base, kill your burrows, if they weren't upgraded to fortified. If that wasn't possible, he would save up a couple more, hit a 65 food timing attack. Orc will still be doing some kind of tier 3 tiny Great Hole expansion. They'll be getting their Bat Rider production ready, but there won't be enough, because the armor upgrades prevented proper Bat Rider damage attribution to the Griffins. There was Holy Light, there was Devotion Aura, there was Protection Scroll. Altogether, it was an incredibly comprehensive strategy that ticked all the boxes. It was very well perfected the first time I saw it already, and it only kept getting better. And everybody ended up copying his build, so you know that it was better than whatever was being done before that.
I love this video. I love every single minute of this video. So we got 2 left, right? I dare him to not mention Ted Fiends. Mr. Schenkhuizen, I double dare you if you don't mention Ted Fiends.
Very influential, fantastic player. He's still around doing events right now and doing streams and everything in China, even though we don't hear much about him here in the West. The fourth of the top 5 influential creative moments is actually, it's got something to do with me, but the real creative person is actually not me. In 2018, Blizzard started, for the first time in 8 or 9 years, they started looking at Warcraft 3 again and giving it some updates. Presumably because Reforged would later be announced in that year. But before Reforged was announced, anyone knew that it was going to happen, we already started having some patches. In one such patch, headhunters were buffed. But not everyone, and in fact most people, did not see the potential for these buffed headhunters. Just 6 years ago, very recently, they gained 100 bonus range, 25 bonus health, and they gained 0.2 per second bonus regeneration on the troll regeneration upgrade.
Can we not buff one unit that much, by the way? Anymore? So many buffs. We'd never do that these days anymore.
And I believe they also lost 10% extra damage during the Berserk mode, where they get the bonus attack speed. Altogether, these buffs made them from a unit that was barely useful into quite the staple unit.
But the Chinese called them toothpick throwers because they were so useless.
Most people didn't have the creativity and the insight to see it. Do you know who did have the insight to see it?
Kibikaki.
One maths professor living in America that liked to watch my streams. He uses the Twitch name SaveOrcas. SaveOrcas was a longtime viewer of my stream, and he sometimes had ideas for me to play various different builds.
Wasn't it Kibikaki first? Ooh, that's a debate. That's a debate. I will put my foot down and say it was probably Kibikaki playing it first, inspiring SaveOrcas to optimize it, to forward it to Grubby to perfect it, would be my memory. I am very sure it was Kibikaki first.
The only problem is, he doesn't play the game. Now, generally, I think you can imagine the quality of backseating that someone might be able to give to a 6-times world championship winner if you don't even play the game. Probably not going to be very good, right? Wrong.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't play the game, he occasionally boots it up and tries build orders by himself against the AI without any of the benefit of trying out his ideas against his own peers or against high-level opponents. He used the power of extrapolation, most likely a beautiful mind, and he combined all of that with the looking at the data, looking how he thinks there might be weaknesses in other pros' builds, and he has been responsible for bringing that strategy, basically forcing it on me. Try this out, and I didn't believe in it, but I tried it. And I would end up playing the Headhunter build.
Insane.
And then I would have a show match against Happy, who for the last 6 years has been the best Warcraft 3 player in the world, undisputed. Again, best Warcraft 3 player in the world for the last 6 years, undisputed beyond any possible doubt. Happy is at the moment the GOAT of Warcraft 3. And I managed to almost beat Happy 3-1 in large part because
that show match was so sick, dude.
Because of this build. And in that 4th game on Concealed Hill, our hearts collectively broke because I made a little mistake and I let this Death Knight get away because of a miss micro. It would have been 3-1, but he would end up reverse sweeping me with a 3-2 score. Nonetheless, that was an incredible series, and I was able to use such a good strategy because someone was so creative that they were able to innovate on the meta without the benefit of playing within that top meta. And I think that's an incredible moment that deserves to be mentioned.
And now it's so cool, right? Like I mentioned this in the cast today and yesterday, how orcs have developed in the past 15 years. Yeah, that's a long time now that I think about it. From Raider, Walker, every single game, every single race you're up against, it doesn't matter, Raider, Walker. And now I watch an orc build by Lynn today, for example, and I see Alta Barracks Burrow, and then I have no clue what this is. I got no idea what this is. Is it a Farseer grunt into Headhunters with a late Warmill? Is it a Blade Master Windwalk Harass as Grubby played it versus Hawk on LR? Is it Blade Master Mirror Image And is he going grunts? Is he going headhunters? Like, orc strategy is also then the follow-up on tier 2, right? The diversification of orc builds is insane at the moment. You can play Mass Wyvern, you can play even Tauren, you can play Shaman, you can play Walkers, you can play a mix of them all. It's incredible. And I think this all started with Kivikaki, SaveOrcas, Grubby ripping out the stubbornness of orcs' strategic thinking, kicking the door wide open, because it's not only Farseer headhunters, it's also the introduction of Shaman, which is a bit undersold here, and which was a response to a strong keeper. And this goes hand in hand. Like, introducing Shaman as a dispel weapon and not going for the slower, but maybe as a unit a bit more powerful walkers was another door that was kicked open. So all of a sudden, Orc had 2 more choices than in the past 10 years. And now everything for Orc works to a degree. Even though on the highest level, they might be like 4% too weak, but just from variety that works up until the craziest high level, Orc is a wonderful race right now.
After I won those games against Happy, there was a buzz across the Warcraft scene where many Asian players reached out to me and they said, wow, that build is so good. And now everybody in the world started using it. And it is probably the most influential any of my builds have ever been. But it wasn't my build. Because I've performed well at the pro scene, but it was usually with whatever I felt like playing at the moment, not with like a really mathematically logical build. I played with feeling, but this was like pure data-driven logic and success.
So cool.
So yeah, I would say the 2 most influential builds that I've done is SaveOrcas' Headhunter build and my Mass Raider style from before.
100%.
So maybe Mass Raider could have made the list, but I didn't include me in the list. But SaveOrcas.
Yeah, Mass Raiders also, the realization that you don't have to fight your opponent is very impressive.
Was an amazing Ghost Rider. Yeah. For the 5th and final moment of memorable creativity, it's gotta be, in general, not just one strategy, but the entire tapestry of Happy's.
What? Ted walked so Happy could run.
Dominance. This Russian undead player has... It's difficult to overestimate Happy's influence on the meta and his contributions to the undead race. Back in 2007, 8, 9, Happy, who is 5 years younger than me, he was very young and he was very good. And he was the 2nd best European player after me, but he was very rigid. Yes. In a way, his principles still are rigid. Like, you know what you're going to get with the guy. But his playstyle was...
I love, by the way, that Grubby realizes and points out the total package of Happy. Like, he as the Omega weapon. Love that. And we'll hear more.
Was so rigid. So, oftentimes, I would play against him.
Oh my god!
And...
This overlay, little bit of a sidetrack here. This overlay, I admit it now publicly. This overlay is a hack. It's called Dream Dota for the original Warcraft 3 mod Dota. Dream Dota. I used it as an overlay because it gave so much information. Back then we had 0 information. We couldn't see both players' resource and supply at the same time. We couldn't see any hero spells. We couldn't see production. We couldn't see time. We couldn't see anything. So I saw this, and I used it for Melee Warcraft as an observer. And 7 years later or so, or 8 years later, whatever, might have been, yeah, like a long time, I'm talking on the War 3 Champions Discord. And I'm talking to Fluxu, who created the Flow servers and basically created the competitive environment that we have now by reverse engineering the Warcraft servers. And guess who in 2010 coded this hack. It was Fluxu. And so I remember that I had an email contact because this Dream Dota wasn't publicly available anymore. You couldn't even pay the creator for it anymore because all the pages were down. Dream Dota was already dead when I saw this. So I had, over like 3 corners, find out the email address of that creator, which was of course a bit obscured. And then a decade later, it turns out that it's freaking Fluxu who did the War3 Champion servers, man. Sometimes the Warcraft world is so weird and so awesome.
We'd be microing and everything, and I would feel like, oh my god, this guy's micro is so good. Let's try to pivot around direct combat. I'll do some raider shenanigans, some hit and run, and then he would have trouble adapting to it. And I saw the rigidity in his style, so I was often able to win from macro perspective. But after his brief stint in StarCraft 2, he played StarCraft 2 and made some prize money there as well in 2011, 2012, 2013 before he quit and went back to Warcraft 3, as eventually I did as well. But his stint in StarCraft 2, I think, really opened his mind to build order versatility and to adaptability. Because in StarCraft 2, you brutally get punished when you are predictable. Because the hard counters of countering someone's build are far more egregious than they are in Warcraft 3. In Warcraft 3, you kind of can be, you know, a strong service tennis player. Just a really strong service, you win many games with it. People know what you're gonna do, but you're gonna do it so well so you can still win. In StarCraft 2, that kind of thing gets punished. It's more rock, paper, scissors with the build orders sometimes. So he was forced to evolve, and I didn't think he had it in him, but he did. Coming back to Warcraft,
I think I want to disagree a bit. In general, this is totally correct. I think the timeline is a bit obscured here, because when Happy came back to Warcraft, well, I think it was 2016, he was still very stubborn, and he was still trying to brute force his builds, and this evolution of Happy creating builds came a bit later. I think it took him 2.5 years or so. Back when, pretty much when he started to compete at Chinese tournaments. 2018-ish. That's when he developed with a bigger variety of strategies, and now he's the freaking master of it.
Warcraft 3 from
But
2018
in general,
onwards,
totally fine.
Happy probably innovated on the way that Undead is played on a really integral level
Yes.
more than 20 times.
Yes.
Right? He's
Yes.
gone from ghouls to
Yes.
fiends and different builds, and he
Yes.
has sometimes added banshees to the build. He had the Pit Lord
Oh, man.
third build to break human expansions.
Thank you.
With Rain of Fire, which
Thank
was
you. So, I think the Pit Lord is a WFZ thing, but everything else is totally correct. Because the WFZ tried it against TH in like 2014 at WCA. It was a great game. I remember it so vividly. But everything else is correct. The ghouls especially, is a Happy thing. Nobody else did it better. Nobody else did it in this style. The way Undead is played today, a lot of people pioneered some stuff, but it's all on the foundation of ghouls. And Happy brought in the ghouls. When everyone thought they're still unplayable and everybody was playing Tet Fiends. So he pulled ghouls from the base. Very few players did it before. Like, thinking about that now is crazy. Very few players did it before. Herd ghouls back to the base, rotate out. Basically playing ghouls like an ice hockey team. I oftentimes do that analogy, right? Your main lineup is tired, so you swap in the second guard. That's exactly what Happy does with ghouls. Harassing into bases, going for the economy. Doesn't matter if it's against Night Elf, if it's against Human. If it's in Mirror, whatever. And then once this ghoul play was established, Labyrinth was able to come in and show us Lich Fast expansion. And on the back of Lich Fast expansion, Happy developed a whole new play style with 2 base versus Undead. But Happy had to come up with the ghouls for Labyrinth to be able to use the ghouls on top of balance changes, of course. But to realize balance changes and implement them into the game, this can sometimes take 2 years in Warcraft 3. Like, from the ghoul buff to Happy realizing how good ghouls are, I think that took 1.5 years with no one else noticing it. So Labby came up with the Lich Fast expansion. Happy adopted the Lich Fast expansion after we had a little stint of the Cryptlord Fast expansion, which opened up the Undead's brain to, in general, expansions. And that's the history of Undead meta at the moment. I still think this only happens because Ted made Undead a competitive race with his Ted Fiends. Though I think Ted Fiends should have been mentioned here.
It was the least popular skill in Pit Lord. It was generally all about Howl and Cleave when he gets picked. But he's like 3rd hero Pit Lord, 1 base timing attack on the human towered up expansion, Frost Nova and Rain of Fire on the towers and the peasants, and that's how he was able to break through when usually there was just a little bit of pizzazz missing to be able to break through the human towers in such a brute force way. He is a 33-year-old player that has 350 APM or so on a bad day, and he still plays on his ancient 4x3 resolution. He's almost amassed $500,000 in prize money, sometimes off the back of $20 or $100 tournaments, absolutely just grinding it down. And he also won a $30,000 tournament a couple of years ago. What are some of the other techniques that he has added, ways that he has creatively added to the Undead understanding of how to play the race? He coil spams aggressively on creeps in order to speed up and streamline his creeping route. When the old thought school was that coil should be preserved, mana should be preserved, or used only defensively to save ghouls and fiends. But he just starts a camp, boom, coil, another coil. Seems very inefficient, but he was able to shave off seconds, which, you know, if you've just watched the Olympics, you'll know shaving off seconds could be the difference between an Olympic world record or not. And it's the same in a Warcraft 3 match. He could arrive to the next camp earlier, he'll have more items, better levels. The only thing he's missing is less mana, which means he can't save units as much. So he compensated with his good micro to send units back when they're really, really low. Another one, he uses frequently, one of the few players in the world to use Backpack. He uses Backpack to send a second Rod of Necromancy to his Death Knight sometimes in some games, so he doesn't need to walk all the way back to get another one. And a Rod of Necromancy has, of course, always been a very valuable tool in the Book of Undead play, but he used Backpack in order to send it to him, so that streamlines his creep rat.
Also, I think nobody uses skeletons better than Happy did. For, like, his scouting is out of this world. How many times did we pawk out over a skeleton last hit doing a creep? Like, he was probably not the first one, but he definitely maximized the efficiency of swapping Rods of Necromancy back and forth between heroes to get as many skeletons as fast as possible. Backpack for sure, 100%. Acolyte pulls against creeps. Scouting, but scouting in general is unreal by Happy.
Third, he has a kind of CCTV style scouting
there
with his 6th Acolyte, which is a Scout Acolyte, and Rod of Necromancy skeletons in order to always be aware of where the opponent is. You never feel as watched as when you play against Happy, where whatever next move you do, he's going to know where you are. So you better make sure it's a good move and doesn't have vulnerabilities, or you're going to get caught with your pants down.
Yeah.
He is probably the biggest innovator of item stacking on Lich. Lich has a good attack speed, so really benefits from bonus attack damage. While Blade Masters and Demon Hunters often purchased a Circlet of Nobility to boost their power, Undeads and humans pretty much just didn't. And he just started buying Circlets on his Death Knight and then giving it to his Lich. It's a lot of money, and I thought Undead doesn't have money to spare for such things, but he proved otherwise. He would also aggressively steal Blade Master type items with his Death Knight in order to steal them from the Blade, as it is often a zero-sum game without a marketplace on the map, and he would then save them up on the Death Knight to give them to the Lich as a present of being finished training from the Altar of Darkness. Like, here's all the items I brought for you. So he starts right out of the gate with 4 damage items, which is pretty insane. As of recently, he innovated on the human versus undead matchup, going Lich first, which for the most part only usually American or Canadian players thought was a cool idea. Lich first against human, kind of a gimmicky cheese.
Lebby.
But he showed it can be sustainably good and repeatable, and maybe in fact the optimal choice against human. And that's pretty much the meta now. Lich first.
Nope. Lich first is over. Lich first is kind of dead, but it was for a long time. We're back to Crypt Lord now, but nobody played a Lich better than Happy. Like the stutter stepping with the Lich, the nukes with the Lich. And I want to add the skill of transitioning strategies in a game. Yeah, Craft also Lich first. True. For sure. Yeah, Craft for sure as well. Let's pick this game versus human. When to go casters, for example. When to add Temples of the Damned. We have seen Possession before, but not in this style. It's not like usually for like 20 years, you had a crypt, you had a slaughterhouse. Sometimes with German undead players, you had double slaughterhouse. But now you look into an undead base and sometimes you see 6 production buildings. That was Happy. Transitioning also from ghouls to fiends, from gargs to fiends, into A-bombs. Sometimes, rarely, but going into wagons. Abandoning destroyers completely in some matchups. Like, always on his feet. Very StarCraft-esque, even though Warcraft isn't usually a game where this benefits you, because buildings take a long time to produce, outside for human because of power build, but you know what I'm saying. So that alone, like, that you can be fluid in your strategies. But yeah, Lich first, not meta anymore. It was Labby, 100% Lich fast expansion is Labby, and Craft to a degree.
And it used to only be good in undead versus undead Lich first, because there's so many small units like ghouls and gargs. But I guess the same thing is true for footmen and peasants, many small units. And a great threat on the Archmage as well. Frost Nova him, and you get a couple of auto attacks in. You trade well, and so on and so forth.
Which, of course, I think I gotta add. Yeah, we've seen it a lot, right? So there's a lot to say. So it's very good that he picked Happy as a general topic, because there's so many things. Lich only works because of Happy's way to play ghouls. And Happy's spam of Dark Ritual. But for the Lich to function, you had to establish the ghoul play first.
It didn't used to be possible, probably because undead fast expansion was worse back in 2010. But it had many buffs in 2018, so it was only a matter of time until someone would do it. But
3 years.
Happy was kind of discriminating against fast expansion against human. He didn't believe in it. But every other worse undead, which is literally everyone else, they were expanding all the time, right? Yeah. 120 from China, all the German and European undeads, they were doing a lot of fast expanding.
Everybody took it from Labyrinth. I'm very sure. Back when Juan was with us in the German league, like, oh my god, there's this new undead player who's going Lich fast expansion. It's crazy. Labyrinth was your favorite undead player, favorite undead for a long time.
I do a lot of fast expanding when I'm undead, because I can't micro like Happy with undead, so I need more money, right? So everyone was doing it except him. When he finally accepted and embraced expanding, he became the most dangerous weapon against human with his Lich fast expo. And as of recently against Orc, he's also come up with the 1-1 or even 2-2 upgraded ghouls. Upgrading armor or attack for ghouls in a one-on-one game against Orc was never really, I can't remember it at least, ever really a thing. But he made it a thing. So yeah, it's really cool to see like another new style there. He's done a lot for the undead race, which always makes you wonder how strong would undead have been, and how much less would they have been nerfed if not for him. And so every player has made his mark. Every top player makes his mark on the meta. Everyone learns from each other. It is very fun to be a part of the scene, to see many of these developments over the last 22 years. I have a long memory of many great meta changes and contributed my own little part to it as well. I have a list of 5 players here that innovated onto the meta, but I couldn't possibly include all of the meta history, except if I make like a 6-hour video or something.
Let's go!
But what are some of your favorite moments that you've seen of players innovating on the meta? Players that you remember from way back when, or even of recently? What are the coolest contributions that you've seen where someone creatively showed a new way to play? Let me know in the comments. I love to read them. As always, it's part of my enjoyment of making these videos, to read those comments with your thoughts. So let me know. And if you enjoyed yourself, be sure to hit the video with a sub. Always helps a lot. I do appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks for watching, and see you next time here on Grubby Talks.
Thank you for the reaction content, Mr. Grubby. This was one of my favorite Warcraft lore videos, I think, that I've ever seen. I don't know if I can give more praise than that. Absolutely glorious. Thumbs up is already here. I think we all enjoyed this, so thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Maybe I want to give a little explanation of why I love Tedfiend so much. In the beginning, I don't remember it that much, but the first year was all right, but not great. Fishy, maybe you can help me out. But the early days, the 2002 days, wasn't necessarily crazy for undead, right? So this is just tournament winners, so it doesn't say a whole bunch, but Night Elf, Human, Night Elf, Night Elf, Night Elf, Night Elf, Night Elf. It took quite a while till Madfrog in 2004 to put undead on the map. So I think the early days, they weren't without any chance, but they weren't that great. So I'd say it goes here. Like this is Reign of Chaos, and the undeveloped early stuff. Then comes the first reign of undead, starting in 2004-5-ish. Because then things get crazy. Then Madfrog is a very, very good player in Europe, and he's at SK Gaming, and SK Gaming goes to freaking Korea. And Madfrog decides it's time to learn what these guys are doing, and it's time to emulate what these guys are doing, and it's time to own everyone. That's what Madfrog did with ghouls. Actually, you know, maybe I'm doing this a disservice. This should be higher. It should rise because it's getting better. So in the beginning, undead didn't do too well. Then there's a rise. Madfrog performing better. Sweet joins the tournament. We got Rain in as well. We get Forth. We get Ghost Up. All of a sudden, there's a lot of undead players who play ghouls and garks and nuke the heck out of everyone. And Madfrog is the best. Forth is to follow. Sweet is insane. Ghost Up is reaching finals. So this is the... up until 2005, the end of 2005. This year, WEG is the peak of the first wave of undead. It doesn't get better than that. So it's not that they're dominating the scene to a degree, but they're really, 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 really good. So this starts at like, this is like 2004, I would say. 2004. And this is the first peak of Warcraft as well. This is where things are blowing up. We get so much prize money. And in that era, like let's say, this is like broken Imba kind of level, okay? The red line. That's like broken Imba. here at 2005, it goes up and it goes up rapidly. And then it stagnates here. Oh, it goes up rapidly. And then it's still going up to a degree, slowly but steady, to reach the peak in like 2005. This was a crazy... 2005 was crazy. Undead was so good with ghouls. And that playstyle. And then things go down the drain so fast. This is where it stops. Like, there is national success. Swede wins the Worldwide Invitational. Here and there is another Swede. Here's another Ghost Stop. Lucy is doing solid in WC3L, becoming like an MVP. Fourth is not too bad. Hazuops has some successes, right? But tournament wins, no chance anymore. After Swede, no chance for tournament wins for Undead. Absolutely nothing. There's a drought for such a long time. You see, there's nothing. Undead can't win any tournaments. And this correlates a little bit with the rise of Chinese humans, with their turtle style that is developed around here. And this also correlates with the rise of Blade Master, because that made Orc pretty damn broken at the time. So it goes down, 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 down. Oh, this is actually not steep enough. This is not steep enough. It was... How do I want to put this? It goes down. It stagnates a little. It goes down. Oh. Whoops. It goes down. And it's somewhat competitive, but not really. And then we arrive at the year of the Undead Lord. And that is 2000. Wait, is it 2010 or is it 2011 or is it 2012? I know I'm looking for one specific tournament. And that's not the WCG. It's the NVIDIA Game Fest. And that was already 2010. So... I gotta correct myself a little bit. So we are going down rapidly to like 2009. 2009, Ted joins the scene. He was part of World Elite for a long time and is becoming a better and better player. And he's getting better and better with his builds. So, rise of Ted. I Am Chengdu in 2009 is, I would say, one of Ted's first big tournaments where he shows that whatever all the other undeads play is not for him. He's playing with a lot more fiends, and the game, in my mind, is a Twisted Meadows game against the Muslim at I Am Chengdu 2009, where the freaking Ted, who's already the hope of all the undead, like bring it back finally, is going Banshee versus humans, unthinkable back then, possesses a peasant to provide his strong heroes with clarity potions. That's freaking Ted in 2009. And that, he's pretty much the only player who plays like that. But this skyrockets Undead back to somewhat glory. And he wins his first tournament in 2010 with the NVIDIA Game Fest. How do I put this to the side? There we go. NVIDIA Game Fest. And that's the first tier 2 tournament that undeads can win again. And then the big moment everybody knows. The next peak of undead gameplay, Ted Fiends 2012 WCG, the first premier title for undead after 7 years, right? 7 years. It was unthinkable. You cannot comprehend this from today's perspective. You cannot believe that a race didn't win any major tournament for this long. Maybe it starts a bit earlier actually with Make Games Colorful, but MGC, Nvidia, the rise of Ted, man. The rise of Ted is unbelievable. We finally have a successor to Sweet, to Mad Frog, an undead that performs at the highest level. And Ted was so successful because he played Ted Fiends. Because he invented a way to move away from the fragile ghoul build that just wasn't made for the time anymore. Ghouls were incredibly oppressive, but people learned to counter it with AoE effects, with summons, with lots of piercing damage, with, you know, basically everything counters it. And then it was a rush to destroyers. And if you defended, cool. And if not, well, then you lose a map or two. But also with the rise of towers, the Blade Masters getting better, etc., etc., there was no real chance. And there comes Ted. And not only does he bring in Ted Fiends, he's starting to tower push. He, on like very, very rarely, but experimented with expansions. So, undead as a whole, and then of course, to meme a little bit here, after Ted leaves the competitive scene, we dip a little bit again, and there's WFZ, and then there's the rise with 120 and Happy. To elaborate on this drought here is a crazy, crazy, crazy void. It's like 5 years of nothing. And that hurt the race big time. Everything that undead is now, undead as a whole, this is like power level basically, right? This is the legends. This is Sweet, Mad Frog, Ghost Up, etc. What we do now has a bit to do with what they did because of like, they came up with Coil Nova, they came up with ghouls, etc. Everything else that builds upon this is because of Ted. And because of Ted, we got WFZ as the soul carry. And from WFZ comes 120, who has a big part of the undead evolution. And then, of course, nobody ever did it better is Happy. Like, that's crazy. But without Ted, no, don't put down. There we go. Without Ted, there's no WFZ. Without WFZ, there's no 120. And without 120, bring in the skeletons and stuff, there's no Happy. So this is the evolution of undead. And everything that undead is doing in 2024 is based on Ted. And that is why, in my opinion, Ted Fiends is one of the strategies that revolutionized a race the most. And it's still relevant to this day in the evolution of undead. Of course, left and right, there were good undeads as well, but they were mostly using whatever these undeads were doing. Ted revolutionized a race that was abandoned, that was unsuccessful, that was uncompetitive, and brought it single-handedly. We always say it, right? It's always good when a race has multiple strong players because they feed off of each other. The one top player, like Sock and 40, one top player has a good idea. The other top player is picking up on that. Both refine it. Both benefit. Ted was alone. He was a lone wolf for the undead. And he came up with everything himself. Happy is coming up with a lot. But when Happy joined in 2016, 120 was already there, bringing undead to new heights that we hadn't seen in 4 years. This was also revolutionary, by the way, in 2014-15. WFZ developed what Ted was doing, and he kept undead relevant. So 120 had a foundation to build off of. Ted had nothing. Nothing. And that is why, to me, it needs to be mentioned when it comes to a soul strategy that defined a race. And that's my addition to Grubby's list.